Hello and welcome back again to When Hope Endures with Mabel and Wesley. We have Brenda again with us here today, and we're going to be talking about rehabilitation, about the exercise they had you doing, how it was, because you spent about 2 months in rehab and transitional facility. So we'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Okay, so yeah, I was at the hospital for 2 months on the rehab floor, and every day I had occupational therapy to work with me on my arm and my hand, and then I had physical therapy, and I also had speech therapy. So typically, I have maybe the most memories of physical therapy because those are also the pictures that my sister would take, or, when I was in the hospital. I think the other reason that I remember the physical therapy portion of it is because that's where I also saw the most improvement during the period of time I was there, because I thought, well, I am going to be walking out of this hospital. I mean, that was my plan. And when I originally was laying in the bed, I was completely paralyzed all on the left side. And they got me up walking initially on a harness. They hooked me up on a harness, and I had to walk down the hallway with that. And I would have a therapist like on a rolling chair in front of me, trying to, help me literally move the left leg in front of the right and that kind of thing. And then we went from the harness to, um, then I started walking with a cane. And my physical therapist, while I was at the hospital, said, "You do not want to be walking with a cane for the rest of your life."
Right.
And so she got rid of the cane. And, I mean, obviously I was in a wheelchair for most of the time, other than those periods of time when I was, up in therapy and that kind of thing. We did all sorts of things. We worked on steps and that kind of thing to see if I could, do one foot over the other, because some people couldn't. I remember the one day that my friend Mark came, and Mark and Marty are both attorneys. Mark was a judge at the time and had been my previous boss when I worked at the county attorney's office. And they had some kind of, it was like I needed to step over something. And I literally stepped over it and fell. And I remember seeing him at the end of the hallway walking towards me, and I thought, oh my God, I hope he didn't see that. I'm so embarrassed. And two, I don't know if he saw it or not. I mean, he was very kind to come in, check and see how I was doing. But I mean, that was the kind of stuff. And they had me on some kind of medication as well for, because I have a lot of, what is the word? Now, when I told you I didn't have problems finding words. I have a lot of spasticity, and so they put me on some medication to try to kind of curb that, but it made me nauseous. So I remember being at physical therapy one time with my physical therapist, Tyler, and we were doing something, and I just threw up all over him. And like my dad was there, and I remember looking at my dad, and my dad's really squeamish about that kind of stuff. So my dad just kind of turned around and walked off. And yeah, it was just a bad situation all over. But that therapist still talks to me today when I go to the hospital. So I guess he got over it.
It's probably you weren't the only one.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the medication was bad news. But yeah, so I did a lot of physical therapy. They would want to do physical therapy and occupational therapy back to back. And I was just too tired. I couldn't do that. So we had to take at least an hour in between, so I could go back to my room and kind of rest and kind of recoup and that kind of thing. Because it was just mentally, I was just so spent.
Right.
But yeah, physical therapy definitely went better than occupational therapy. I got very little movement. I remember being excited that when I yawned, my hand would move. Excuse me. And yeah, just my hand just really has not ever come back. And I've got some shoulder movement, but that's about it. And so I had very little movement, with it. But any rate, speech therapy, they had a very nice woman, and unfortunately for her, I really felt like I didn't really need much speech therapy.
Mhm.
And so I got to a point where I finally said to him, do I even have to do this today? It just seems so repetitive and that kind of thing. And, they were like, yeah, we really feel like you need to do it. Because I was pretty much of the opinion that anything they wanted me to do, I would do.
Right.
I would try anything because I thought I've got people to see and places to go and I need to get back to work.
Mm-hmm.
I had a dog as well that I had had for about a year. The one that you saw, the miniature schnauzer.
Uh-huh.
And she was staying with my mom and dad at the time, and my dad would occasionally bring her over, and then she would act like she hardly even knew me, and I thought, wait a minute, you little Benedict Arnold. But yeah, so I just thought, I want to be back out on my own and, that kind of thing. So speech therapy was something I didn't really care for, but I certainly did it, like whatever they said they wanted me to do.
Probably want to make sure they didn't miss anything there.
Yeah.
I think it's common for somebody after a stroke to have to go through all three therapies.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure probably there was no regression in that area by not working on it, or that they didn't miss something there.
I'm sure it helped. I'm definitely sure it helped. But, and I understood that they wanted to help me the best that they could. Because they even had a psychologist that would come in and talk to me about things and, just to make sure mentally, I guess I was okay. And
right.
they, I thought they did a really good job of creating a holistic plan for me because they put me on medication as well. Like they immediately put me on a mood stabilizer to help with depression and anxiety and put me on a sleeping pill. I'd never had any problem sleeping before. And then they put me on a medication to help me sleep, which, I still even take today. But yeah, apparently the statistics for people who have had a stroke and then are suicidal or commit suicide are astronomically high.
Right.
And so I'm very fortunate that, they said, let's get this all put together for you in terms of medication and, but yeah, so any rate, the therapists were great. And they always wanted to kick me out because an insurance always thought that I was doing fine and that kind of thing. And I remember, we had to object to that a couple different times while I was there. And, I've talked to my therapist that I had when I was there, and they said nobody spends 2 months anymore there. They're immediately, booted out after, I guess, a couple weeks. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So when I was there, Dr. Dodds was the rotating doctor that would come in every morning and, talk to me and find out, how things were going and evaluate whether or not I had any medical issues. I just remember him saying to me, you really need some additional therapy. And at the time, I guess I didn't really think about it, but he had talked to my sister and my dad at the time and convinced them that I needed to have additional. So I had to then go to transitional rehab afterwards. So I spent 31 days in transitional rehab, which is really a nice word for old folks home for the most part. I remember being on an exercise bike and some old guy came up to me and said, why are you here? You're way too young. And I said, well, I had a stroke. But literally there were people there that were like in their hundreds, and
Huh.
you know,
Wow.
they had at one point somebody died while I was there, and I mean, it's just,
Wow.
you know, I mean, there were just a lot of really old people, but
Right.
you know, but the good part was I did get therapy every day. I don't think I got it on the weekends, but I got physical therapy and I got occupational therapy, and the occupational therapist, unfortunately, was not good.
Hmm.
So, I was talking, you know, I have quite a few friends. Like while I was in the hospital, I had somebody come see me every day that I was there, every single day. I mean, you know, you know, those then you know who your real friends are, and you know,
Mhm.
your family and that kind of thing. Um, but one of my friends knew an occupational therapist that had specialized in neuro. And so while I was in the transitional rehab place, I had told her that, you know, how unhappy I was about the kind of occupational therapy I was getting. And, you know, the guy just wasn't trained. I didn't think well enough, and just I wasn't getting any progress.
Right.
And she came over and met with me while I was there. And I did therapy with her for maybe a couple years after that. And so I would just pay her out of pocket to give me additional therapy.
Mm.
And I mean, ever since then, because even now that I do outpatient therapy, I still employ students to come over to the house and do occupational therapy with me, because
Mhm.
it's always my hope to make some kind of progress with my arm, even though it's been very limited. You know, but you just do what you got to do, you know, and you just keep with the hope. You know
Right.
exactly what you.
And can you feel your arm? Like
Um,
you can feel that you, how do you say? You can feel that you can
yeah,
feel.
the sensation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I have full sensation in my left side. I can feel hot and cold. You know, I can feel pain in it. I have a little bit of a lesser pain sensation on the left side. So like when COVID was going on and I was having vaccines, I was always like, okay, hit it on the left side. Any kind of, you know, time I have to have a shot, I'm like, I would like it done on the left side.
And so you're not worried. It's like I'm not gonna feel it.
Well, feel it,
Yeah.
but just not.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I.
You know, because other people were complaining
Yeah.
about, oh my
Right.
gosh, it hurts for
And
days. And
or
yeah, I don't have any of that problem. Yeah, which is good.
So transitional rehab, was that also inpatient then?
It was, yeah, I lived there for the 31 days. I
Okay.
lived in the facility. And the good part was, you know, I could leave for, you know, more time. I spent every night there, though, but
Mhm.
I could like one of my friends took me over to the farmer's market over at Wheeler Farm, because the
Uh-huh.
facility's right next to Wheeler Farm. And, you know, so we would get out, and, you know, they wanted me to be in a wheelchair, you know, while I was there most of the time, so I
Mhm.
didn't fall. I did fall once at the hospital when I was trying to, I don't remember what I was doing, but I weighed so little at the time that I fit literally right in between the wheels of the wheelchair.
Ah.
And I was
Wow.
lodged on the floor in my room. And you know how they have like the um thing that you can call the
Call
nurse,
Uh-huh.
that
buttons,
kind
uh-huh.
of thing. Yeah, it was nowhere around.
Oh.
Absolutely nowhere around. So I sat on
Oh my
the floor,
gosh.
and I started after I'd been there for probably at least, I don't know, a half an hour, and I couldn't figure out a way to get myself, I couldn't get unlodged from
Right.
in between the wheels of my wheelchair and the wall, and I couldn't get up, and I kept thinking, okay, they come at 9 o'clock to give me my pills.
Oh no.
And so I spent a half an hour on the floor, and then and the door was shut, and the TV was on, unfortunately. And so I started screaming I thought maybe the person next door will call for me.
Mhm.
And I'm yelling, help, help, help. Finally, the nurse comes in at 9 to give me my pills. And she looks at me and she says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I fell." I said, "Help." And apparently the nurse had some kind of hearing loss or something. And she
Oh,
said, we
no.
heard somebody yelling, but she said, I thought it was coming from the other end of the hallway. And I thought, oh my Lord, what a nightmare that was. And so I had like a bruise that covered like literally all down my leg, all on one side of my butt. And it was horrible. It was very traumatic. And then she had to bring, thank God for CNA. She brought some big,
Right.
strong CNA guy in, and he just lifted me up like I was a sack of potatoes,
Probably pretty scary during that time, not knowing when you're going to get up. And oh man.
And I thought at least I knew when they were coming in, or that I would at least see somebody to give me my medication. And really it was like one of the only times I didn't have a visitor.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, horrible, but we all survived.
Yeah.
That is nice that they did let you get out so you can see there's life outside of the walls of a hospital or even a transitional facility. It's still kind of rough being in there for an extended period of time.
The weird part was, like, other people were really antsy to go home and that kind of thing. And I missed my house, and my own bed and my own pillow and stuff like that. But I didn't have that antsiness that a lot of other people did, where they wanted to get out, because I thought this is a place where I'm going to get the most help.
Okay.
And I just knew I needed help. Cognitively, I might not have totally been there, but I understood that these were the people who were going to help me. And, really by the time I left the hospital, at Intermountain, they have you come up with a theme song.
Okay.
And so my theme song was Nancy Sinatra, These Boots Are Made for Walking.
Okay.
And they play it over the speaker,
Oh,
and then
wow.
like all the nurses and all the staff come out and clap while you're leaving, and you walk around the whole pod that they have there, and then you get on the elevator. Of course they make you sit back in your
Right.
wheelchair.
Yeah.
But and I thought, I'm walking out of here. And fortunately I did. I walked out.
That's
So
awesome.
that was a great day walking out. Wasn't a great day going to the transitional rehab, because I just remember not wanting to be there, and not really wanting to sort of socialize. Like that was the other thing. I wanted to socialize with my family and my friends that came, but I did not really want to socialize with other patients. And, because they always wanted me to eat in the cafeteria when I was they had kind of a cafeteria on the floor, and I thought, I don't really want to. Like, there was a gal there that was in a wheelchair, and she it was her third time in the hospital for having had a stroke. And I remember the next morning I said to the doctor, I said, oh my God, is this going to happen to me again?
Yeah, that would be scary.
Yeah. And so it was kind of scary at that point a lot of times. I would talk to other people in therapy, if I saw them doing something, and be encouraging and that kind of thing. But sometimes talking to the other people made me even more afraid. So I just didn't.
Right there, your focus is on you and your recovery at that point.
Yeah.
It's always good to be, empathetic with others and what they're going through. But at that moment, your energy is focused on you.
Yeah.
You don't really have that extra energy
to empathize with somebody else.
Right. Because, but it sounds like you were very goal-oriented and very determined to get the most out of it. And that seems to have helped you not get antsy and to kind of, I'm going to make the most out of this. I am going to do that. And that's awesome.
There were, people there that I would talk to the therapist, and they would say, one of my patients, refused services today or that kind of thing. And I thought, why would you ever refuse anything they want you to do? Right. Literally, they would have said jump off a mountain. If I thought it was going to help me, I would have done exactly what they're saying. I was just all for it. And even now with the volunteer job that I do, Sometimes the therapist will say, well, we've had a problem with this person wanting to do therapy and that kind of thing. That's like the pitch I always give people, do whatever they say because that's the means to the end, or to a better life where you can actually be functional
Yeah.
in society again. Yeah, it was just critical that you do all of what they say, I thought.
And I think you need to have that kind of support over there because not that many people get that support
Oh, yeah.
over there. And I remember not wanting to do things, and he's like, "Nope, you're gonna go and do it, and you have to do it." And like, but I don't want to. And it's like, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And not like trying to be mean, but trying to help out. Or sometimes, like, I can drive, and sometimes I'm like, no, I'm not gonna drive. If I mess up, like somebody cuts off in front of me or whatever, and I get inches or whatever, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do this again. And he's like, yes, you're gonna do it again.
You're gonna get back on the horse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if I didn't have that support,
Yeah.
who knows? Like
Yeah.
like you said, like I'm mostly like 100%.
Yeah.
Mine was more mentally and stuff, but I'm like mostly 100% on doing things that if I let myself go, that would have been a waste of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's,
Just had too many. I felt like I was responsible, for myself, obviously financially and, and I just wanted to be back in society. And I just didn't think not doing what they suggested was an option.
Right.
The group that I'm affiliated with at the hospital, it's called RAMP, is Rehab Advocates Mindset Mentorship Program. And really, it's a program where we all focus on what your mindset is while you're in there. And if you have a hopeful, determined mindset, you're going to do better, period. And, so that's what we try to hopefully, interact with patients and help them through that process.
And I still think that's amazing that you're giving back in that way.
Yeah, like even when when I was in there, they didn't have the program. And they formed the program, I guess, about a year after I left. And then I just ran into one of the therapists that organized it. Bonnie Larson is the one that formed the program. And I ran into her over at the hospital when I was seeing, I go and get Botox to help me with my mobility aspects. And I just ran into her and I was just kind of, she's really friendly, super outgoing. And, we were just kind of chatting and she said, well, I've got this program. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, I said, give me a call. And somehow somebody, a different therapist, I think, nominated me for the program, but I've been doing it since 2020. And, it's been good. It's been good for even, interacting with the patients, but also interacting with the whole group because the whole group consists of people who have a variety of different issues that brought them to that particular rehab floor. So they have amputations or TBIs or they're, quadriplegics or that kind of thing. Before all this happened, I did not know anybody who had had a stroke. I didn't know anybody in a wheelchair that, functioned daily in a wheelchair. And literally, I'm in awe of all these people. One of the guys in the group has had, he was involved in a car accident that his car started on fire and he's got burns over 90% of his body. And he's had to have his hands amputated and, he operates with a hook. And it's just, these people are an inspiration every day to kind of look at. And, it's just nice to interact with people who have overcome whatever their, difficulty is their medical condition or their
Definitely.
accident.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how when you go through something, eyes are open to a whole new
Oh, for sure.
world out there.
Yeah.
And it's not that we purposely ignore it or are blind to it previously.
Yeah.
It's just we're not really aware.
Yeah.
And so
Or
kind
you
of that
don't
awareness
know
that comes.
personally anybody, you don't interact with anybody.
Right.
Yeah, I never knew anybody that was in a wheelchair before. And I mean, even my sister and I will joke about when I was in the wheelchair because she would take me to go see a movie. And, we'd actually have to sit on the front row where they have
Uh-huh.
the area for wheelchairs and stuff. And she was pushing my wheelchair and we were going down kind of a ramp. And I, like, literally, I was falling forward.
Wow.
And some lady had to say to my sister, you need to turn the wheelchair around and take her down backwards so she
Okay.
doesn't do a face plant out of the wheelchair. But who knew?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? We were rookies at the time.
A lot to learn.
Yeah.
So in the previous episode, you had talked about doing work while you were doing payroll
Yeah.
or bill it, whatever it was, while you were at the hospital. How was that? Did you have any assistance in being able to do that from occupational therapy, or did you just kind of do that there on your own, just pick it back up again and start?
Pretty much I did it on my own because as an attorney, I couldn't have occupational therapists seeing the names of the
Right.
clients and that kind of thing. And the type of finances that were going on. So at the time that it happened, I had one legal assistant working for me who actually is still working with me now.
Okay.
An absolute blessing. People were so nice after this situation happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I had farmed out. I had been at it's called continuing legal education. I have to get a certain number of hours every year to keep my license. And I had been at a conference with a gal that I went to law school with. And she and I were sitting next to each other, and she's a sole practitioner like I am. And she said, okay, if anything were to ever happen, will you be my backup? And I said, sure, if you'll be my backup. And thank God she remembered it. And so when my family contacted her, she took I do family law cases and criminal defense. She took almost all my family law cases, to help my clients because I didn't want my clients to be in a lurch just because I was in the hospital for 2 months
Right.
so she took my clients, but I still had all of these clients on the books and she would essentially bill me for whatever time she had done. So I would have to issue money to her and I would have to transfer money from bank accounts and make sure that my bank accounts were matching my billing invoices. And so somehow I managed to get through that while I was in the hospital because it happened in the middle of April when my stroke happened. So I had all the previous, 16 days or whatever of time entry that needed to be accounted for because as an attorney, you're only entitled to take the money out of the trust account once you've earned it. And so I had to do that the very first month that I was there. And then I did it again one other time while I was there for the second month because, essentially that's the bank account that my legal assistant gets paid out of. I was taking a salary as well. And fortunately, she made arrangements with an attorney she had worked with previously to work part-time. I was also renting the building that was next to mine. And so I was having problems while I was in the hospital collecting rent from my tenant. And
It's not something you want to have on top of everything else going on.
Yeah.
no, but this was good. So it's a barbershop that's next door, and the guy's wife kind of ran, the scenario for him. And she sends me this nasty email because, I could still read my emails. I have my laptop with me at the hospital. And she sends me this nasty email about, well, how are we supposed to pay rent when your office isn't open, 5 days a week like it used to be? And I just emailed her back and I said, well, I had a stroke and I'm in the hospital. And you could tell it was like a total mic drop where she was like, oh, like she felt like, the biggest jerk in the world at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I eventually did get paid. And so all's good.
So you were doing that on a laptop
Yeah.
without the use of your left hand.
Yeah.
So I imagine that was a bit of a struggle moving to one hand with that, where you're used to having both.
Oh yeah, because
Both.
one of the hardest parts really is I was really a fast typist before all this happened, and I did a lot of my own typing. I wasn't really one to pass it off to staff or anything like that. I use Dragon Speak now. I don't like it at all. I don't think it works that well. And it doesn't really work very well for a lot of what I do. So I'm constantly rereading emails or rereading things that I've drafted and think, how did it come up with that weird word?
Right.
It spells everything wrong. And, or like, for example, I've had different clients named Stacy, and one spells it EY and one spells it I at the end, and that kind of thing. So I'm like going in and trying to fix all these things constantly. So I need regular names. Wesley, perfect. Yeah. It will come up every time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just that part's been hard to do it. And they have one-handed typing, but I've not tried that. I do a lot of, hunt and peck kind of thing with my left hand, because sometimes Dragon Speak is just not reliable enough.
Right.
And I'm very kind of type A and a perfectionist, so it bothers me to see any kind of like typos or that kind of thing, or when I go back and read emails and I'll think, the other attorney probably thinks I'm a fool. Like, I didn't want other people to even know that I'd had a stroke.
Right.
And I didn't want clients to know either. Like, so I would let my legal assistant, tell anybody, even when I transitioned back to work. I used to, when I first was practicing, the client would be there and I would go out and then I would bring them back to my office. And then now that I, walk the way I do and that kind of thing, I thought, I don't want that to be their first impression. So I have my legal assistant now bring everybody to me instead. And obviously I can still stand up and shake their hand. And a lot of times people don't notice. I've been very fortunate that surprisingly it didn't seem to affect anybody's willingness to hire me, because I thought, those are the kinds of things that ran through my head while I was in the hospital. Nobody's going to be wanting to hire me because now my body isn't what it used to be. I used to be able to wear, 2-inch heels. I was devastated when I had a year after my stroke. I gave away all of my pumps. I had a whole collection of them in every color, and I had really cute outfits, that I would wear with these. And I was just thought, how is this going to work? And wearing flats all the time was not in the game plan, but it has since had to be in the game plan. And, so it's hard because I have a, movement's not as easy as it used to be. And so I walk really slow. I have a problem getting across intersections and that kind of thing. So if it's a 4-lane highway type thing, I can't get across fast enough when the light goes off. And so we work on that in therapy, and I'm faster than I used to be, but I still feel way too slow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you continue therapies still
Oh, for sure.
today, and
Yeah.
still hoping to get even just a little bit of movement to make continual
Yes.
progress too. And I think that's really really cool from my perspective that that you are keeping that up, because some people will, well, I've done it for a couple of years, I'm where I'm gonna be, and they kind of just resign themselves to
What
that.
it
But
is.
you keep that hope or that faith, whatever you want to call it, that
Yeah.
maybe I will continue to progress, and I think that's awesome that you keep that drive.
Well,
Yes.
I think the fear is that if I don't keep going forward, then I'm just going to regress and go backwards. So that's the
Okay.
concern too. So
Definitely.
yeah, I try to do some kind of something every day, but it gets very boring.
I imagine it's been
Yeah.
many years now, and probably
Yeah.
a lot of repetition
Oh,
over
for
that
sure.
time. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's really no, form of physical or occupational therapy that I haven't tried at this point. I love games, so anything they can do to combine it as a game, because I'm really competitive. I'm much more willing to do it, and I really I like doing it with a therapist, so I'm not as motivated on my own, unfortunately. So, and my husband's been great about, being willing to, like, we try to go for a walk every night and that kind of thing, just so I can keep moving and keep, keep moving forward. It's all you got to do.
Yes. Yeah.
that's awesome. I think we'll wrap up this episode, and then next time we'll finish off by talking about what it was like coming home and the transition, getting back into work and everyday life.
Okay.
So
And
once again,
how you met
appreciate
your
it.
husband and
Yeah,
I.
how you met your husband. 'Cause I heard that you met him afterwards. So
Yes.
excited to hear all those stories.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.